I've always been a straight shooter. When I discovered my firefighter boyfriend's phone filled with flirty messages to some girl I'd never heard of, I walked right up to Nathan and handed him his phone, demanding an explanation. After a long silence, he confessed. The girl with depression that I rescued on a call. I'll admit I had feelings for her. But Summer, we've been together since high school. That's not easy to throw away. I promise I'll keep my distance from her from now on. Looking at the sincerity in Nathan's eyes, I swallowed my heartbreak and chose to forgive him. The wedding would go on as planned. But on our wedding day, his teammates suddenly burst into the venue. Captain Evening found out about your wedding. She's threatening to jump off a building. The suspended diamond ring dropped to the floor with a sharp clink. Nathan bolted toward the door like lightning. I screamed after him, my eyes red. Nathan, if you walk out that door today, we're done forever. He hesitated for just a moment, then left without looking back. He broke his promise. After all, the wedding venue erupted into chaos. Best whispers pierced my eardrums like thousands of tiny needles. Both sets of parents rushed over, confused about what had just happened. Nathan's teammate, Josh, stood there helplessly, his face bright red. Summer Evening has clinical depression. Last time she tried to jump, the captain saved her. She's completely dependent on him. Only he can talk her down. It's a matter of life and death. The captain had no choice. Please don't blame him. Josh had worked with Nathan for 3 years. He'd always been respectful to me, calling me by name with a warm smile. But now he couldn't even meet my eyes. I didn't know how many of Nathan's secrets he'd kept, or what his connection was to this evening girl. Pain spread through my chest like cracks in ice. The first time I truly felt Nathan's betrayal. My parents held my hands, panicking. What's going on? Isn't he on wedding leave? Who needs him to rescue them right now? Nathan's parents called him frantically, apologizing profusely. Summer, honey. Don't worry. I'm calling that boy right now. If he doesn't come back, I'll break his legs myself. The diamond ring lay on the red carpet, kicked further away by passing feet. Just like my shattered heart. I stood there in my wedding gown, the train dragging on the floor like a cloud beaten down by rain. All those countless fantasies about my wedding day. I never imagined it could be this humiliating. The groom abandoning his bride in a hall full of wedding guests. For another woman. 5 hours. 108 calls. Nathan didn't answer a single one. I watched my phone screen go dark. Light up, go dark again. Until finally the battery died completely. Sunlight streamed through the church's stained glass, casting fractured colors on the floor, falling across my empty ring. Finger guests gradually left, leaving behind scattered confetti and half-eaten reception food. I suddenly felt dizzy. Everything spun. The last thing I heard was my mother's panicked crying. When I opened my eyes again, the smell of disinfectant filled my nostrils. A nurse was changing my foredrip. Seeing me awake, she said gently, "You're carrying a life now. You can't let yourself get this upset. You need to take care of yourself." I stared at the ceiling as tears silently rolled down into my hair. From age 17. Accepting Nathan's love letter on the high school field to college. When he took a 20-hour train ride just to surprise me for the weekend. To the day he became a firefighter. His eyes red as he promised. "I'll protect the people and I'll always protect you." 7 years flashed through my mind like a movie on fast forward. I smiled bitterly looking at my parents and Nathan's parents. Their faces unable to hide their excitement about the pregnancy. Tears welled up in my eyes. How could I explain that? This 7-year relationship finally reached its end? At 7 that evening, Nathan finally appeared after vanishing for 6 hours. His face was pale, his eyes filled with guilt. "Summer, I'm sorry." His voice was hoarse. "Evening. I couldn't let her die. Saving lives is what I do." I swallowed the bitterness in my throat. There are dozens of firefighters. It'd have to be you. She chose our wedding day to jump. She demanded you specifically come save her. What do you think that means, Nathan? I'm not an idiot. After a long silence, he gripped my cold hands, his voice rough. "Summer. In 7 years, I've never asked you for anything. Just this once. Please don't make a big deal out of this. Give Evening a hard time. I'm worried about her condition. She can't handle that kind of stress." I looked at the earnestness in his eyes. My heart felt like it was being crushed in someone's fist so tight. I couldn't breathe. He shouldn't be asking me for favors. He should be apologizing. A person's first instinct doesn't lie. He hadn't thought about how humiliated I must have been at that wedding. He hadn't worried about why I ended up in the hospital. All he could think about was Evening. Tears fell like broken pearls, landing on the white sheets and spreading into dark, wet circles. It took all my strength to squeeze out one word, "Fine." He visibly relaxed, then said, "Evening's really unstable. Knowing about our wedding. Let's postpone it for now. I'll help her get treatment for a while. Once she's a bit better, maybe 3 months. Just 3 months. Then we'll have the wedding. Okay?" Nathan's voice carried careful, tentative hope. I'd waited 7 years. 3 more months shouldn't matter. But looking at the concern for another woman in his eyes, I suddenly realized I couldn't afford to wait even 3 months. The baby in my belly seemed to sense my emotions and moved slightly. I touched my abdomen where a 6-week-old life was growing hours, yet somehow no longer having anything to do with him. Slowly pulled my hand back, my voice flat as a dead lake. "Nathan, I'm not good at remembering things. But I remember when you gave me that love letter at 17. You were so nervous you walked with both legs on the same side. I remember the first time you held my hand. Your palm was so sweaty, but you wouldn't let go for 3 whole blocks. I remember graduation day. You hugged me and said you'd take care of me forever. You said you'd make me the happiest bride all these years. You remembered I don't eat onions or ginger. You remembered to make me ginger tea during my period. You remembered every little habit of mine. I always thought you cherished me more than anything." Looked up at him, tears suddenly breaking free. "But today I don't feel your love anymore." 7 years of memories crashed over me. Nathan's eyes reddened too. His throat bobbed as a tear rolled down. "But Summer Evening needs me right now. One sentence needs me shattered my last shred of hope." I looked at him and suddenly laughed through my tears and go to her. He seemed stunned as if he hadn't expected me to say that. But in the end, he said nothing. He turned and left the hospital room. The next day, I packed my things to check out. Just as I turned the corridor corner, I ran into Nathan. His eyes weren't on me at all. Every ounce of his attention was on the girl beside him. She wore a hospital gown, her face pale, half carried by him like a frightened deer. So this was the woman he'd abandoned me at the altar. For my gaze must have been too intense. Evening noticed me first, instinctively shrinking behind Nathan, her fingers clutching his sleeve tightly. Only then did Nathan turn to look at me. His brow furrowed immediately, his tone impatient. "Summer evenings? Emotionally fragile. Whatever you want to say. Let's talk at home. Don't make a scene at the hospital and scare her." Evening timidly poked her head out. her voice barely a whisper. Summer, Nathan and I really aren't. Please don't misunderstand. I squeezed the ultrasound report in my hand until my knuckles turned white, but forced a thin smile. You're overthinking it. I'm just here to check out. I turned toward the billing office without another glance at them. Nathan's expression flickered with something strange, as if surprised by my calm. His heart felt oddly hollow. He reached out to stop me. I instinctively looked back and noticed a stain on my trench coat I hadn't seen before. His eyes followed my movement. Seeing me take off the coat, he removed his jacket to put over my shoulders. I stepped away, he froze. Then followed me, trying to take the coat from my hands. Let me have it. You love this coat. I'll get it dry cleaned. I shook my head and tossed the coat directly into a nearby trash can. My voice flat. Throw it out. I don't like things with stains. You know, I'm particular about that. Looking at my cold expression, Nathan's smile stiffened. He knew I wasn't just talking about the coat. I was talking about our relationship. Before he could respond, I'd finished checking out and walked away. Not far from the hospital, my phone buzzed, a text from Nathan. Don't be mad. I got you those Napoleon pastries you mentioned wanting. Remember to pick them up when the delivery arrived at home. I stared at the familiar pink box and suddenly laughed. Whenever he made me angry before, he'd always buy pastries from this shop to apologize. I mechanically took a bite. It used to taste so sweet. Now it was just bitter and hard to swallow. That night Nathan didn't come home. Extracting yourself from a 7-year relationship hurt more than I'd imagined. I couldn't sleep until dawn. So I got up and started packing. The matching hoodies in the closet side by side. Photo frames on the bookshelf. The sticky notes on the fridge. Every item carried a memory that cut like a knife. I remember the year we graduated. Nathan had just become a firefighter working around the clock. But on his days off, he'd come find me. His eyes bright as stars. Summer. Once I save up enough for a down payment, I'm marrying you. 3 years later, he stood before me with a property deed and a diamond ring. His voice trembling. I did it. I got us a home. I kept my word. The sunlight was especially beautiful that day. I held him and cried for a long time, feeling like the luckiest person in the world. We painted the walls together, assembled furniture together, filled the balcony with sunflowers. My favorite. He said he wanted sunlight to always fill our home. But now this home couldn't hold me anymore. As I sealed the last storage box, sky began to lighten. When the movers arrived to take everything away, both sets of parents showed up at the door. I hadn't told them about Nathan, so they still didn't understand why a couple about to get married was suddenly breaking up. My parents sighed, but didn't put, just saying, "Come home whenever you want." Nathan's mother grabbed my hand and wouldn't let go. "Summer, please give Nathan one more chance." What happened at the wedding? He just made a mistake. I said nothing. Just had the movers continue loading boxes. Just as Nathan's mother was about to wear out, her lips begging, the door opened. Nathan came back and he brought evening with him. She wore Nathan's jacket, suddenly clutching his arm like a cat who just found its owner. The room went deathly quiet. Everyone's eyes locked on them. Nathan's mother's voice trembled. "Nathan, did you betray Summer?" Nathan's father shook with rage. "Who is this woman?" Nathan didn't answer. He just scanned the empty living room, his gaze landing on me. "You're moving out? You're moving out?" Nathan's voice was a jagged whisper, his eyes darting from the cardboard boxes to the bare walls, finally landing on my face. Before I could even open my mouth, a sharp, echoing smack shattered the heavy silence of the room. Nathan's head whipped to the side. His father stood before him, chest heaving, his thick, calloused hand trembling mid-air. "You bastard," his father growled, the words scraping out of his throat. "You leave your bride at the altar, you vanish for a day and a night, and you have the nerve to bring another woman into the home you built with Summer? Have you lost your damn mind?" Evening gasped, instinctively shrinking behind Nathan, burying her face into his shoulder. She clutched his jacket, the same jacket he had tried to place on me at the hospital, like it was a lifeline. "Please, please don't hit him," she whimpered, her voice trembling like a frightened child's. "It's my fault. I was just so scared. I couldn't be alone. I made him bring me." "Shut your mouth." Nathan's mother snapped, her usual gentle demeanor completely gone, replaced by a fierce, maternal rage. She pointed a shaking finger at Evening. "I don't know who you are, and I don't care. You don't belong here." "Mom, stop it." Nathan barked, stepping in front of Evening to shield her. He rubbed his jaw, a red handprint already blooming on his pale skin. "Evening is sick. She almost died yesterday. You don't understand the situation." "I understand enough," his father spat back. I stood by the doorway, watching the chaotic scene unfold like I was a spectator at a play that had nothing to do with me. The screaming, the crying, the defending, it all felt so distant, muted by the invisible wall of ice that had encased my heart. "Excuse me," one of the movers interrupted awkwardly, holding the last taped box. "Miss, where do you want this one?" "Take it to the truck, please," I said smoothly. My voice was entirely level, devoid of the hysteria Nathan was likely expecting. Nathan's eyes widened, panic finally piercing through his misplaced savior complex. He left Evening by the door and took a step toward me. "Summer, wait. What are you doing?" "I told you, I just need 3 months. We're just postponing the wedding. You don't have to pack up and leave. This is our home." I looked around the living room. The bare walls where our photos used to hang left faded rectangular shadows on the paint. The balcony, once filled with my sunflowers, was empty. "It was a house, Nathan. Not a home," I said quietly. I reached into my purse, pulled out the heavy set of keys, and set them gently on the kitchen island. Next to them, I placed the velvet box containing my engagement ring. The metal made a soft, final clink against the marble. Nathan stared at the ring, the color completely draining from his face. "Summer, no. No, please." He reached out to grab my hand, but I stepped back, my eyes warning him not to touch me. 3 months? I asked, looking him dead in the eye. "You want me to wait 3 months while you play Florence Nightingale to a woman who chose our wedding day to threaten suicide?" I shook my head slowly. "You didn't just walk out of the church yesterday, Nathan. You walked out of my life. I'm not a backup plan you can put on a shelf until you're done playing hero." "I'm not playing hero." His voice cracked, desperation bleeding through. "It's my job. I save people. There were 50 other firefighters in your precinct yesterday," I countered, my voice dropping to a harsh whisper. "But she didn't want a firefighter. She wanted you. And you wanted to be wanted by her. You like how small she is. You like how much she needs you. That's not true. Isn't it?" I glanced at Evening, who was watching us with wide, tearful eyes from the hallway, though I didn't miss the subtle, calculating tightness around her mouth. "You can have her. You can have this house. My lawyer will contact you about buying out my half of the mortgage." Nathan's mother grabbed my arm, sobbing openly now. "Summer, honey, please. Don't do this. He's just confused. Give him a chance to fix this. We only recognize you as our daughter-in-law." I gently, but firmly, detached her fingers from my sleeve. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Vance. But I can't marry a man who would leave me standing alone at the altar. I have to protect myself. And," I added silently, "I have to protect my child." I didn't tell Nathan about the baby. I didn't tell his parents. If I did, they would weaponize the pregnancy to keep me tethered to him, and Nathan would use duty and responsibility as a chain to bind us together. I didn't want a father for my child who stayed out of obligation. I wanted a clean break. I turned to my parents, who had been standing silently by the door. My dad's jaw was tight, his fists clenched in his pockets as if restraining himself from doing exactly what Nathan's dad had done. My mom had fresh tears on her cheeks, but she nodded at me, a silent beacon of support. "Let's go," I said to them. As I walked past Nathan, he caught my elbow. "Summer," he choked out, his eyes red-rimmed and pleading. "If you walk out that door, I don't know what I'll do." "You'll do what you always do, Nathan," I replied, pulling my arm free without looking back. "You'll save her. But nobody is going to save you." The first month was a blur of survival. I moved into a small, sunlit apartment on the other side of the city, far from the firehouse and the life I used to know. The morning sickness hit me like a freight train, ruthless and unrelenting. I spent my mornings gripping the edge of the bathroom sink, throwing up until my throat burned, and my nights lying awake on a mattress on the floor, staring at the ceiling, waiting for a text or a call that I had blocked from coming through. It hurt. God, it hurt in a way that felt entirely physical, like someone had reached into my chest and carved out a piece of my lungs. 7 years wasn't something you could erase overnight. I missed his laugh. I missed the smell of his laundry detergent. I missed the way he used to kiss my forehead before leaving for a shift. But every time the grief threatened to drown me, I would place my hand over my lower abdomen. The baby was the anchor that kept me from floating away into the abyss. I threw myself into my work. As a freelance architectural designer, I had the luxury of working from home. I took on twice as many clients, burying my heartbreak under blueprints, AutoCAD files, and endless cups of decaf tea. Through the grapevine, I heard echoes of Nathan's new life. Josh's wife, Sarah, was a good friend of mine, and despite my request for a clean break, she couldn't help but update me over coffee one afternoon. "It's a complete train wreck, Summer," Sarah said, stirring her latte aggressively. "Evening practically lives at the firehouse now. She shows up with lunch, sits in the lobby, and cries if Nathan has to go on a call. The captain is furious. He's warned Nathan twice that if her presence interferes with operations again, he'll be suspended." I took a slow sip of my water, keeping my face neutral. "And Nathan allows this?" Sarah rolled her eyes. "At first, he seemed to think he was fixing her. But Josh says Nathan looks like a ghost lately. Dark circles under his eyes, snapping at the rookies. Evening threatens to hurt herself every time he tries to set a boundary. He's trapped, Summer. He built his own cage, and now he has to live in it." A tiny, bitter part of me felt a flicker of vindication, but it was quickly swallowed by a wave of profound exhaustion. I didn't care anymore. Let him be trapped. The day everything came crashing back into my orbit, I was 5 months pregnant. My belly had popped, an undeniable, rounded curve beneath my soft knit dresses. I was at the city hospital for my anatomy scan. I had just seen my baby on the monitor, a healthy, active little boy who had the audacity to inherit Nathan's straight, stubborn nose. I had cried in the dark room, a mixture of overwhelming love and a sharp, solitary sorrow. I was walking out of the elevator into the main lobby, holding the strip of ultrasound photos in my hand, when I heard a familiar voice shouting. "I can't be here every single day, Evening. I have a shift in 20 minutes. The doctors said your vitals are fine." It was just a panic attack. I froze. By the triage desk stood Nathan. He was wearing his heavy turnout pants and a plain gray t-shirt, looking ragged. His hair was disheveled, and the exhaustion Sarah had described was carved deep into his face. He looked 10 years older. Clinging to his arm was Evening, sobbing hysterically. "You don't care about me. You're just going to leave me here to die. You promised you'd take care of me. I am taking care of you." Nathan ran a hand down his face in pure exasperation. "But I have a job. I have." Nathan stopped mid-sentence. His eyes had swept across the lobby and landed on me. The air in the hospital corridor seemed to vanish. I stood completely still, my hand instinctively coming up to rest on my stomach. There was no hiding it now. The beige maternity dress I wore hugged the distinct curve of my pregnancy perfectly. Nathan's eyes dropped from my face to my stomach. He physically recoiled, as if he had been shot. "Summer," he breathed, his voice carrying over the noise of the busy lobby. He dropped Evening's arm. She stumbled, letting out a sharp cry of protest, but Nathan didn't even look at her. He started walking toward me, his pace quickening with every step until he was practically running. I quickly shoved the ultrasound photos into my purse and turned toward the sliding glass doors, my heart hammering against my ribs. "Summer. Summer, wait." He caught up to me just as the automatic doors opened, stepping into my path. The cold autumn wind whipped around us, but Nathan didn't seem to feel it. His eyes were wide, wild, and locked entirely on my midsection. "Are you?" His voice broke, his hands trembling as he hovered them in the air, wanting to touch my stomach but not daring to. "Summer, are you pregnant?" I met his gaze with absolute glacial calm. "Step aside, Nathan. Is it mine?" He choked out, tears instantly pooling in his eyes. "Tell me. Please. How far along are you? Why didn't you tell me? You lost the right to ask me any questions the day you left me at the altar," I said, my voice steady, though my pulse was roaring in my ears. "Summer, please," he begged, ignoring the stares of the people walking past us. "If you're pregnant with my child, my God, if I had known, I would never have." "You would never have what?" I cut him off, my tone turning dangerously sharp. "You wouldn't have abandoned me? You would have stayed out of obligation? Because that makes it so much better." "No. Because it changes everything. We're having a baby." He reached for my shoulders, but I violently swatted his hands away. "I am having a baby, Nathan. I am. You are having nothing. Nathan." Evening's shrill voice pierced the air. She was standing outside the hospital doors now, shaking without her coat, her face pale with fury and panic. She saw where Nathan was looking, saw the curve of my belly, and her eyes darkened with an ugly, undeniable malice. "Nathan, my chest hurts." Evening cried out, clutching her shirt, her knees buckling dramatically. "I can't breathe. Please." In the past, Nathan would have bolted to her side like a trained dog. But today, he just stood there, staring at me, paralyzed by the colossal magnitude of his own mistake. He looked back at Evening, who was now kneeling on the concrete, wailing, and then back at me. The illusion was fully broken. In that single moment of hesitation, I saw him finally realize exactly what he was tied to, and exactly what he had thrown away. "Go to her, Nathan," I said softly, the pity in my voice cutting deeper than any insult could have. "She needs you." I walked around him, heading toward the parking lot. "Summer. Wait. Please, I can't let you go like this," he screamed after me, taking a step forward. "Nathan. I'm dying." Evening shrieked, collapsing entirely onto the pavement. Nurses were rushing out of the doors now with a wheelchair. Nathan stood stranded in the middle of the sidewalk, torn between the ghost of his past and the nightmare of his present. I didn't look back. I got into my car, locked the doors, and drove away, leaving him behind in the rearview mirror. The fallout from the hospital encounter was swift and vicious. According to Sarah, Nathan completely spiraled. Knowing that I was carrying his child broke whatever fragile, guilt-ridden bond he had formed with Evening. He tried to leave her. He packed her bags and told her she had to move out. Evening responded by swallowing half a bottle of sleeping pills. Nathan found her, pumped her stomach, and saved her life again. But this time, there was no relief, no heroic rush. Just a suffocating, terrifying realization that he was a hostage. He couldn't leave without her dying, and he couldn't stay without dying himself. His work performance plummeted. 2 weeks after I saw him, Nathan made a critical error during a 3-alarm fire in a commercial warehouse. Distracted by his phone buzzing relentlessly in his pocket, Evening threatening to jump off a balcony because he hadn't texted her back, he misjudged a structural support. The ceiling partially collapsed. Josh was caught in the debris. He escaped with a fractured collarbone and severe burns on his arm, but it could have been fatal. The captain stripped Nathan of his badge the next day, suspending him indefinitely pending a psychological evaluation. "He's done," Sarah told me over the phone, her voice shaking with residual fear for her husband. "Josh won't even speak to him. The whole house has turned their backs on him. Nathan drove to your parents' house to try and find you last night, but your dad threatened to call the cops. He's losing his mind, Summer." I listened to the rain lashing against my apartment window. I rubbed my swollen belly, feeling a strong, rhythmic kick against my palm. "Tell Josh I'm so sorry he got hurt, and I'm bringing over casseroles next week," I said simply. I didn't ask anything else about Nathan. My son was born on a crisp morning in late February. I named him Leo. He was perfect. 10 tiny fingers, 10 tiny toes, and a quiet, observant demeanor that filled my apartment with a profound, unbroken peace. My parents were there, crying tears of joy, holding my hands, and helping me navigate the beautiful chaos of new motherhood. For the first time in over a year, I felt entirely, undeniably whole. It wasn't until Leo was 3 months old that I saw Nathan for the final time. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was at the park near my house, sitting on a sun-drenched bench while Leo slept soundly in his stroller. I was sketching a new architectural design in my notebook, sipping on an iced coffee, enjoying the warm breeze. A shadow fell over my sketchbook. I looked up. I barely recognized the man standing before me. Nathan had lost at least 20 pounds. He was wearing a faded jacket that hung loosely on his frame. His hair was overgrown, his beard untrimmed, and his eyes, those bright, confident eyes that had promised to protect me at 17, were hollowed out, entirely dead. He looked at me, and then his gaze slowly, agonizingly drifted down to the stroller. He stared at the sleeping infant. His hands began to shake violently. He dropped to his knees right there on the grass, a raw, animalistic sob tearing out of his throat. "Summer." He wept, his forehead touching the edge of the stroller's wheel, careful not to jostle it. "Summer, please. I'm begging you. I have nothing. I lost my job. I lost my friends. My parents won't speak to me. Evening, she left me. She found some tech guy who could afford her therapy bills, and she just left. It was all for nothing. I threw away my whole life for nothing." He looked up at me, his face slick with tears, snot, and desperation. "Please let me come home. I'll do anything. I'll sleep on the floor. I'll get a job at a grocery store. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you and our baby. Please, Summer. I love you. I never stopped loving you." I looked down at the broken man kneeling in the dirt. I waited for the anger to rise. I waited for the heartbreak, the sadness, the vindication, or the pity. But I felt nothing. Just an immense, sprawling emptiness where my love for him used to reside. "Nathan," I said quietly, my voice softer than the rustling leaves above us. "Do you know what the worst part of that day was?" He stared at me, breathless, hanging on to my every word. "It wasn't the humiliation," I continued, closing my sketchbook. "It wasn't the guests whispering, or my parents crying, or the fact that you left me in my wedding dress. I leaned forward slightly. The worst part was knowing that if the building was burning, and it was me and Evening trapped inside, you would have saved her first. Because she made you feel like a god, and I just made you feel like a man. Nathan let out a choked, agonized wail, burying his face in his hands. You didn't love her, Nathan, I said firmly, standing up. You loved the way her brokenness made you feel powerful. And when she broke you in return, you realized you weren't a savior at all. I unlocked the brake on the stroller. He's beautiful, Nathan gasped out, reaching a trembling hand toward Leo's tiny, sleeping face. He looks just like me. He doesn't look like anyone yet, I corrected him calmly, pulling the stroller back an inch out of his reach. But I'm going to make sure he grows up to be a man who keeps his promises. Summer, you can't just leave me here, Nathan sobbed, clawing at the grass. I have no one. You made your choice, Nathan. Now you have to live with it. I turned the stroller around. I didn't rush. I didn't run. I walked at a steady, leisurely pace down the paved path, the sunlight warming my shoulders. I heard him crying behind me, screaming my name until his voice went hoarse, but the sound faded as I moved further away, eventually swallowed entirely by the sounds of the children playing, the birds singing, and the gentle, rhythmic breathing of my son. 3 years later, my architectural firm launched its first major public project, a beautifully designed community center in the heart of the city. I stood at the ribbon-cutting ceremony wearing a sharp white suit, holding a bouquet of sunflowers. Beside me stood David, a structural engineer I had met on the project. He was quiet, steady, and brilliant. He held my left hand, his thumb gently stroking the new, simple gold band on my ring finger, while holding 4-year-old Leo on his shoulders with his right. Leo was laughing, pointing at the balloons. David was smiling up at him, a look of pure, unadulterated devotion in his eyes. As the photographer snapped our picture, my gaze drifted past the crowd. Across the street, wearing a faded neon vest, a city sanitation worker was emptying a trash can. He paused, wiping the sweat from his brow, and looked over at the commotion. Our eyes met across the asphalt. Nathan froze. He saw the white suit. He saw the ring. He saw the tall, broad-shouldered man holding the little boy who had his nose. For a split second, time stood completely still. Then, I smiled. It wasn't a smile of malice, or triumph, or revenge. It was just a smile. Genuine, bright, and completely free. I turned back to my husband and my son, the flash of the cameras capturing a perfect moment in time, leaving the ghosts of the past exactly where they belonged, in the shadows.